Not long before his passing, Audie Murphy confided in close friends about 9 Hollywood legends who secretly lived outside the norms of their time. Once hailed as America's most decorated World War II hero, Murphy's life was marked by valor and tragedy in equal measure. He had faced death on the battlefield hundreds of times, killed over 240 enemy soldiers, and earned every major honor for bravery his nation could give, including the Medal of Honor. When Murphy transitioned from war hero to movie star, he carried more than courage. He brought an extraordinary insight into the human soul under pressure. A former studio executive who collaborated with Murphy during the 1950s later recalled that Audie understood the burden of carrying hidden truths. He bore the invisible scars of war until his final days, a pain that made him deeply empathetic toward others who lived behind facades, including several of Hollywood's most admired figures. Those closest to him revealed that Murphy developed quiet friendships with certain actors and actresses who struggled to conceal their real identities during cinema's most glamorous era. These were stars whose polished images as ideal lovers and screen icons masked realities they dared not show the public. Audie never traded in gossip, a former co-star once explained. He simply recognized the quiet suffering of people forced to hide who they were. After witnessing the worst of humanity in Europe, Murphy had little tolerance for Hollywood's false moral standards that punished honesty and rewarded deception. Tonight, we uncover the 9 stars Audie Murphy is said to have known were secretly gay or bisexual, icons trapped behind their own publicity. They lived outwardly perfect lives as leading men and women, but privately endured the terror of exposure that could end their careers in an instant. First on the list, Rock Hudson, Hollywood's ideal of masculine charm, but a man with a hidden truth. In the 1950s, Hudson embodied everything audiences desired in a romantic hero: tall, magnetic, and forever paired with America's sweethearts on screen. The studios built him into the ultimate ladies' man, turning him into one of cinema's most profitable faces. Insiders say Murphy was among the very few who saw through Hudson's carefully constructed image. He was the most famous closeted star of that period, admitted a veteran publicist who knew both men. They shared the same agent, social circle, and mutual respect rooted in their military backgrounds. Hudson's Navy service creating common ground with Audie's Army past. Within Hollywood, Hudson's sexuality was a whispered secret, one the public never suspected. Universal Studios went to remarkable lengths to preserve his reputation, even arranging a marriage to his agent's secretary, Phyllis Gates, to silence growing rumors. Audie never condemned him, but he could see how much the act was eating Rock alive, a mutual acquaintance recalled. Murphy recognized the fatigue of a man trapped between truth and survival, the same weary expression he sometimes saw in himself. Throughout the 1950s and early 1960s, the two often crossed paths socially, and Murphy came to respect Hudson's professionalism and genuine decency toward everyone on set. At the same time, he resented the hypocrisy of an industry that forced someone so kind to live a lie. Audie believed truth was vital, not as moral judgment, but as a way to stay sane. He viewed Hudson not as deceitful, but as a victim of a system that demanded silence in exchange for survival. Years later, when Hudson became the first major celebrity to publicly acknowledge having AIDS, America was stunned to discover the truth he had hidden for decades. Murphy, who perished in a 1971 plane crash, never lived to witness Hudson's final act of courage, revealing his real self to the world. Friends of both men later reflected that Murphy would have respected Rock's honesty at the end, though he'd have wished it hadn't taken tragedy to bring it out.
Second came Cary Grant, the embodiment of timeless charm hiding a very private life. For generations, Grant personified grace and confidence on screen, his wit and sophistication setting the gold standard for leading men. Yet, according to Murphy's quiet observations, behind that polished exterior was a man who shared his home for years with another actor, Randolph Scott. They lived together for more than a decade, recalled a former studio assistant who claimed Murphy was aware of their relationship. Audie never said much, but he knew. Murphy once confided to a friend, they weren't simply housemates, they were the only genuine thing in that entire home. Grant and Scott lived together intermittently for nearly a dozen years, a domestic setup that fueled endless Hollywood whispers, but was publicly framed as a thrifty bachelor's convenience. Studios worked tirelessly to spin alternate tales, promoting staged romances and eventually orchestrating multiple high-profile marriages for both men. A director who had collaborated with Murphy remembered him saying that Grant could act straight better than anyone, both on camera and in real life. Murphy saw in Grant another master performer, a man who had molded a persona so persuasively that even he sometimes lost sight of where the act ended. What seemed to fascinate Murphy most about Grant wasn't just his flawless facade, but his creation of a hidden refuge where, briefly, he could exist as himself. The house Grant shared with Scott became, to Murphy's eyes, one of the few places in Hollywood where truth could breathe. Those close to Murphy said he viewed Grant's private life with both admiration for his skillful balance and sorrow that such secrecy was necessary. To Murphy, Grant's tightly controlled existence mirrored the broader hypocrisy of a business that sold fantasies while forbidding authenticity. Performance, Murphy believed, wasn't merely an art form, it was a means of survival, said a former agent who knew both men well. He'd witnessed how easily a mask could harden into a prison, and saw in Grant a man trapped within a character of his own making. Historians still debate Grant's sexuality, some arguing for bisexuality rather than exclusivity. Regardless of the full story, Murphy supposedly recognized in Grant a life that demanded constant image management and painful personal compromise. It was a struggle Murphy understood intimately, projecting a hero's face while waging inner wars no one saw. Anthony Perkins, the haunted genius behind Psycho, created one of film's most unforgettable portrayals of fractured identity. His chilling performance as Norman Bates reflected in Murphy's private view the same turmoil Perkins endured in real life. Known for his quiet torment, Perkins carried on a secret romance with Tab Hunter, according to a casting director who knew them both. Murphy once collaborated with a writer who said, "Tony was the loneliest man I ever met. He couldn't live as himself." Throughout his career, Perkins' homosexuality stayed hidden, though he shared deep relationships with several men, including Hunter. Like many of his generation, Perkins eventually married photographer Barry Berenson and had 2 sons, maintaining the facade demanded by Hollywood. Audie respected pain and Tony wore his like armor, recalled a friend who knew them. Murphy saw in Perkins a man whose true self had been buried so deeply that the strain showed only through his art. What struck Murphy most, said those familiar with both men, was how that long deception eroded Perkins from within. Unlike others who managed their dual lives with ease, Perkins seemed to absorb the conflict until it shaped both his genius and his grief. Living with secrets slowly poisons the spirit, one actor recalled. He'd seen it in soldiers who stayed silent after war and recognized the same burden in Perkins, a man drained by pretending. Perkins's reality remained hidden until his 1992 death from AIDS-related pneumonia. Years later, his widow, Barry Berenson, spoke about his bisexuality with compassion, revealing that their marriage held genuine affection despite its complexity. Murphy, who died decades earlier, had regarded Perkins as a tragic emblem of Hollywood's toll on authenticity. True artistry, he believed, was too often bent by the demand to appear acceptable. Raymond Burr, the composed star of Perry Mason, became a television symbol of justice and restraint. Behind that calm exterior, Murphy privately observed, lived a man guarding profound secrets and a lasting relationship with another man. Burr publicly denied his sexuality his entire life, though insiders and Murphy himself were aware of the truth. Murphy reportedly told the director, "That man carries a story he'll never tell." To conceal his truth, Burr invented elaborate lies, fake marriages, even a son lost to illness. In reality, he shared over 30 years with Robert Benavides, his partner from the Perry Mason set. The two built a business together, orchids and wine, masking their bond as a simple professional venture. Murphy's reaction, remembered by friends, wasn't one of judgment, but of recognition for another man forced to live behind a careful script. Murphy knew that if Burr's truth had surfaced, his entire career would have unraveled. A 1960s audience would never have accepted a gay Perry Mason. What caught Murphy's attention about Burr was how he managed to live honestly in private while preserving his public mask. Unlike many closeted stars consumed by secrecy and solitude, Burr built a private world of companionship and stability that, though hidden, gave him genuine comfort and love. Those who knew Murphy said he felt a deep kinship with Burr, shaped by his own experience of living behind walls of silence. While their hidden truths were vastly different, Murphy's wartime scars versus Burr's forbidden love, both understood the constant vigilance needed to protect their private selves from public exposure. A former co-star said Murphy saw bravery in the way Burr shaped his life, not the loud heroism of battle, but the quiet strength of crafting something real beneath the pretense. Burr's long partnership with Benavides remained largely unspoken until the actor's passing in 1993. The two men shared 33 years together, an extraordinary feat in an age when discovery could destroy both careers and reputations. To Murphy, who died more than 20 years before Burr, the actor embodied the double life that so many gay performers endured, one of careful deception balanced by the deep human need for sincerity and love, often glimpsed only in places like Palm Springs or Bakersfield. 5. James Dean, the rebel's fluid identity. James Dean captured restless youth and emotional depth in his short but blazing career. His roles in East of Eden, Rebel Without a Cause, and Giant defined a generation, his legacy far outlasting his death at 24. Murphy privately observed that Dean's electrifying presence came from a complex sexuality that defied his era's strict definitions. Whispers of Dean's bisexuality persisted for decades, said one casting director familiar with both men. Murphy once dismissed Dean as all pose, but later admitted the younger star longed for freedom Hollywood would never grant him. Unlike many closeted actors who split their public and private selves, Dean blurred the line, bringing provocative ambiguity to his work and his image alike. His connections with both men and women only fueled the fascination, creating a mystique that became central to his legend. He wasn't the danger, the rumorous were, Murphy reportedly said. Murphy understood that Dean's refusal to fit neatly into Hollywood's heteronormative mold was a gamble few could afford, sustained only by his rare talent and magnetic pull. Over time, Murphy's opinion softened. He began to see in Dean a kind of integrity masked by his theatricality. According to those close to him, Murphy came to admire Dean's unwillingness to be boxed in, viewing it as a quiet form of defiance against the system's rigid codes. Murphy hated pretense, said a director who had worked with both men, but eventually he saw something real beneath Dean's image, a refusal to betray who he was. Debate over Dean's sexuality continues, with biographers and friends offering conflicting accounts. Perhaps that very uncertainty captures Dean best, a man who lived between categories that his world wasn't ready to name. To Murphy, who died in 1971, Dean represented another kind of survival, neither hiding completely nor exposing everything, but maneuvering between truth and protection in a way that made honesty possible, if only in fragments. Those who remembered Murphy said he came to respect that subtle resistance, not rebellion for its own sake, but a clever way to live authentically within an unjust system. 6. Marlene Dietrich, the icon's fluid love life. Marlene Dietrich brought European allure and daring sensuality to Hollywood, creating a persona that upended traditional ideas of femininity. Her tuxedos, androgynous magnetism, and fierce independence made her a singular figure among Golden Age stars. Murphy, in private, saw in her an honesty rare for her time, a woman who matched her art with her life. He admired her wartime service, but insiders say he also knew of her romantic exploits as well as her military ones, recalled a USO official who worked alongside them. The two bonded over their devotion to entertaining soldiers during World War II, despite the vast differences in how the world saw them. Marlene Dietrich's bisexuality was an open secret in Europe, though more discreetly handled in America. Throughout her life, she balanced a marriage to Rudolf Sieber with affairs involving both men and women, among them Greta Garbo, Edith Piaf, and Mercedes de Acosta.
She was the bravest of them all, in battle and in love, a mutual friend remembered Murphy saying. He admired how she refused to apologize for her nature, even when honesty meant risking everything she had built. What impressed him most, those close to Murphy said, was Dietrich's moral courage during the war. Despite being born German, she renounced her citizenship, denounced the Nazi regime, and risked her safety entertaining Allied troops near the front lines, earning honors from several nations for her service. Murphy saw in her a courage that mirrored his own, said one former agent. His came in flashes of combat. Hers endured quietly through conviction and truth. He recognized both as real forms of valor. Unlike many on Murphy's supposed list, Dietrich never fully hid her sexual fluidity. Though Hollywood's publicity machine highlighted her male lovers and buried her female ones, her relative openness within the industry set her apart, a defiant kind of honesty that carved out her own freedom amid the limits of her age. Those close to Murphy recalled that he admired Dietrich's defiance of Hollywood's moral expectations, seeing in it the same fierce independence that once led her to defy the Nazis and stand with the Allies. Her actions revealed a devotion to integrity over convenience, a quality Murphy held in the highest regard. To Murphy, who passed away in 1971, Dietrich embodied a rare form of truth in an industry built on illusion. Her screen image might have been polished, but it still reflected her real, complicated self instead of hiding it behind a complete fabrication.
Say, that's funny. Coming from you.
I know. Oh, Joe, do you remember the night you spoke of music and what it meant to you?
7. Barbara Stanwyck, the unbreakable woman with the secret heart. Stanwyck built her legend on playing resilient, self-made women who refused to be subdued by men. Her turns in Double Indemnity, The Lady Eve, and Ball of Fire cemented her place among Hollywood's most commanding stars. Murphy once remarked privately that Stanwyck's screen power came from her real-life strength, a strength that quietly included a concealed love affair with another woman. Rumors suggested she shared a lasting bond with her publicist, said one studio insider who claimed Murphy was aware of it. Murphy reportedly avoided social gatherings involving her husband, Robert Taylor, saying their entire marriage was a performance. That marriage, lasting from 1939 to 1952, was widely believed among insiders to be a lavender arrangement, crafted to shield both from whispers about their sexuality. Though Taylor's orientation remains uncertain to this day, multiple biographers have noted Stanwyck's deep connection with Helen Ferguson, her longtime publicist. Murphy, ever perceptive, called the Stanwyck-Taylor marriage the biggest act in town, recalled an old acquaintance. He never condemned them, though. He saw two people doing what they had to do in a ruthless system, yet he never mistook the pretense for reality. What moved Murphy most about Stanwyck was how she managed to preserve her self-respect and calm amid relentless public intrusion. Those who knew Murphy said he viewed Stanwyck as someone who endured Hollywood's unfair demands without letting them corrupt her sense of self. She never faked who she was, recalled one former co-star, except when the spotlight forced her hand. In private, among trusted company, she lived with sincerity, a quality Murphy both noticed and admired. Her relationship with Ferguson reportedly lasted for many years, though both women remained discreet to the end. Their quiet devotion, known in limited circles, stood as a remarkable act of love in a time when such truth could ruin lives. To Murphy, who passed away in 1971, Dietrich personified the double life many women of her era were forced to navigate, the tension between public disguised and private honesty. 8. Montgomery Clift, the beautiful, broken soul. Clift brought to film a tenderness and depth that reshaped how masculinity could look on screen. His work in From Here to Eternity, A Place in the Sun, and The Misfits proved him a performer of unmatched emotion and nuance. Murphy believed that Clift's artistry was intertwined with the anguish of concealing his sexuality. Brilliant, tortured, closeted, said a director who knew them both. Murphy once called him the finest actor alive and the loneliest man I ever met. There was an understanding between them, two men guarding private wounds of very different origins.
While others in hiding managed to balance their dual lives, Clift was consumed by the strain of living a lie. His dependence on alcohol and pills, worsened after the 1956 crash that scarred him, reflected the toll of constant internal conflict, one that ended his life at 45. Murphy saw Monty's pain long before that wreck, said a mutual friend. Audie recognized in Clift's haunted stare the same fatigue he'd once seen in soldiers, the weary vigilance of a man unable to rest inside his own truth. What inspired Murphy most, friends said, was Clift's ability to turn that agony into performances of raw, unfiltered emotion. Even while living behind a mask, Clift brought unmatched honesty to his roles. Drawing on his own battles, he created characters that bled with real vulnerability. Murphy often said true art is born from pain, recalled one agent familiar with them both. He saw in Clift a man who transmuted suffering into art, pain into beauty, a transformation Murphy deeply respected. Clift's sexuality was hidden from the public then, though whispers followed him for years. His real relationships stayed private, while studios paired him with female co-stars to protect his image. For Murphy, gone by 1971 and only 5 years after Clift, the actor symbolized both the creative brilliance and human cost of secrecy in old Hollywood. Murphy's empathy ran deep, recognizing in Clift's torment a parallel to his own, the burden of living under a mask, of presenting courage while concealing truth.
Hello, I'm Tab Hunter. Did you know that mental illness claims more victims than any other disease?
9. Tab Hunter, Hollywood's picture-perfect boy next door. Hunter personified 1950s innocence, blonde, athletic, endlessly charming. To fans, he was the model of American wholesomeness and Warner Brothers' prized young star. Privately, Murphy saw Hunter's image as one of the industry's most elaborate fabrications, a cheerful mask hiding the life of a closeted man. The all-American kid who lived in fear, recalled a studio publicist who had worked with them both. Audie and Tab met through mutual studio friends, They weren't close, but Murphy understood the immense strain Hunter lived under, a man whose entire fame rested on a lie. His studio arranged dates, fake romances, and photo spreads to maintain the illusion of straight perfection. Behind the scenes, Hunter loved in secrecy, including a quiet relationship with actor Anthony Perkins that remained unknown for years. "He's too good for that town," Murphy once said, according to an old acquaintance. He saw in Hunter a decent soul crushed by the constant act of pretending.
Murphy understood that duality, the brave face masking turmoil, all too well. What worried him most, friends said, was the danger in the gap between truth and image. The bigger the lie, the greater the fall, and no one's persona was as polished, or as false, as Hunter's. Murphy often warned that illusions can't last forever, said a fellow actor. He believed performers like Hunter risked not just their careers, but their sanity, the slow erosion of self that comes from relentless deceit. Hunter's worst fear nearly came true in 1955, when Confidential magazine exposed his arrest at a pajama party years earlier. Only quick studio intervention saved him from professional ruin. The scandal showed how perilous life was for gay actors under Hollywood's moral code. To Murphy, who died in 1971, Hunter epitomized the industry's hypocrisy, a system that profited from purity while destroying those who didn't fit its illusion. Decades later, Hunter reclaimed his truth with his 2005 autobiography, finally confirming what many had long known. That honesty, achieved at last, gave him a peace most of his peers never found. A peace Murphy, had he lived, would have deeply admired.